Hello, and welcome back after a brief hiatus to another episode of the Critical Fools podcast. This week is episode number 83, and we're reviewing the 2019 Irish crime drama Calm with Horses. Or in some countries, apparently it's a history of violence. I don't know why they had this kind of name change. It took me a while to actually find this film when I watched it a few weeks back. But yeah, this is a film by Nick Rowland. I'm the one who actually suggested reviewing this film. How I first stumbled upon this was actually looking at the filmography of Barry Keoghan. I apologize if I misspell his name, but I'm a big fan of his acting in general, and this kind of came on my radar and kind of wanted to check it out and see how it was, because this was one of his earlier films in his career, and he since kind of had a breakout success, and he's now currently dating Sabrina Carpenter and is kind of more in the Hollywood limelight. So yeah, I kind of wanted to get your initial thoughts, Chris. What do you think of the movie?
One thing also, I didn't realize that I'm pretty sure it was, I'm going to fact check myself, but I'm pretty sure it was actually produced by Michael Fassbender.
Daniel Emerson.
Wait, that's the director. Oh, no, you're right. So wait, what's the...
Nick Rowland is a director.
Huh, I thought I read somewhere that it was, maybe he was just the money behind it or something.
It could be.
But he was involved. I know that, like, yeah, that's what it is. It's actually in the wiki. Michael Fassbender served as executive producer via his DMC film banner. So I guess, like, yeah, that's the other thing too. Maybe one day I'll do a deep dive on, like, okay, who gets actually credited to, like, be the actual producer, like, officially?
I have no idea how that works.
And then, like, who are these other producers? I guess, like, anybody that helps in the filmmaking process is a producer, but then who determines who gets, like, the produced by? Like, that's the one. Maybe a side quest for me one day.
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Because it's kind of weird. It's like you hear headline and you're like, well, this guy's actually the producer, but you're saying that this guy was also a producer. Like, anyways, high level. There are aspects of this movie that I found really intriguing, and there are aspects of this film, I think, mainly with the storyline that I was like. So to give you a recap, I guess to jump to, like, how I felt after finishing the movie earlier this week. It was kind of frustrating. I didn't feel like I know it's based on a book, so maybe if I had read the book, I would have the same frustration. I don't know. I can't compare the both because I didn't read the book. But basically, there were times where, like, I was, like I said, really intrigued. So basically, I would have loved Arm to, like, have killed that crazy dude. I'm a big believer, as you know, like, laws are bendable when needed. And I found his character arc to be
Arms.
Arms to be, because I know that from a certain perspective, because I was reading a lot of analysis that, like, it's a story of basically a tragic story, right? Like, it's a guy that felt trapped, with his basically how he viewed himself and his role in his community. To get some backstory, right? He was a boxer. He accidentally killed somebody in the ring, and I think he was traumatized to the point where he never felt like he could escape that, and he felt he was just, even his name Arm is, like, significant to, like, his boxing career and like his physical nature, how he can basically rough people up, and he's a pretty
imposing he is.
Yeah, and he's good in close quarters combat and stuff. And I think, like, maybe it's the human in me, like, you love stories, or I think humans in general, because if you look at even old tales, like, either there's the tragedies, this is, I think, in this bucket, or there's the stories that, people overcome their difficulties. And actually, I didn't mind the ending of, like, how it all went down in the phone call, but it was like, I thought, like, he was going to make one action before he, like, look, if we take away this book and the drama, and we just looked at this person, we read him in the news, we would just be like, oh, this is a guy that he must have some issues, because, like, he didn't, like, he was just like a speck of the earth. Like there was, like, I thought he was going to do one thing. I didn't think he had to give the money, because remember that debate with the old lady about, you're going to be giving somebody tainted money. But I looked back and reflected on the film, and I was like, so basically his redeeming act was that rejected the killing that innocent, or not innocent, but that killing that man. Okay, he
Well, I
rejected.
think his redeeming quality was having some restraint.
Yeah, and so like I think that was fair, but I was like, in the end, I was like, if I'm honest, like this is a film where I'm just like, yeah, I'm not recommending this film. It's like the story is like in the book. I guess I'll say the same thing with the book. Like I'm like, this is probably a mediocre story. Then like maybe there's more in the book about Irish culture, which is more interesting. But maybe the film had to condense that stuff. But I was like, based on what we've done with films, I was like kind of underwhelmed. I thought I kept, because it was such a slow pace. I kept thinking like, oh, this is gonna
It's gonna build or have a
there's
good
gonna be a
percent.
payoff. There's gonna be a payoff. And I was like, then I'm watching, and it's like the end. He does the phone call. Actually, a great scene, and then he dies, and I'm like, okay, like it was about the journey. Then I think, okay, maybe it was about the journey, but I was like, the journey wasn't that interesting. Like,
I think
okay,
it's more that he couldn't redeem himself was kind of the tragedy of it.
yeah. Well, I'm like, okay, dude. Well, best of luck in the next life. The I mean, at least, dude, kill that old guy, dude. That was if he had done that, I would have liked his character a lot more, dude. That guy needed to be put away. That guy was nuts.
Yeah, was it Potty or Potty? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the brother. Yeah, it was the He was.
By the way, great acting from him. That guy was creepy
Yeah,
as hell.
that was great acting. I agree.
But I didn't
And
realize that until after I looked it up that Potty was actually in. He was a character in Peaky Blinders, which kind of makes sense.
the actor.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, like seeing his look and kind of, I was like, yeah, of course you were in Peaky Blinders. That sounds just about right.
Yeah. And the reason I focus on Arm, because I do feel like even though there were other characters, and I think they played their role.
What do you think of Barry's character?
I thought he was very intriguing, right? He played the stereotypical rural gangster, Irish gangster. I thought obviously he's a great actor, so he killed his role. But I will say this about maybe the directing and the writing of the script. Like, I didn't find his character too multidimensional. Like, I thought, like, okay, he's playing his role really well. You can tell he has.
I thought he was a little weaselly.
He has, but yeah, he has this inner conflict, right? He's not a killer. He's not ruthless. And
no,
actually,
but he puts all the dirty business on the Arm.
Like, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say Arm was, and this is why I think I liked Arm. Like, this is why I had some expectations of the film, because like when you're watching the film, even like the motif of like his name is really good. Like he's the Arm, right? He is the guy that's actually doing the action, and this guy's the I wash my hands. To your point, I agree with you about the Weasley bit. I don't want to belabor the point about my issues with the the final story arc, but I actually thought that the strengths of the film. I'm curious what you thought the strengths were too, but were any scene that involved like I guess I'm gonna call her the girlfriend, baby mama, I guess, and the kid were really good. I thought those were, whether it was with the horses themselves, which we talk about that in a second, or their debates about like she's trying to get him out of this dark lifestyle and also telling him that he has to face the realities that their kid needs like more help.
Yeah.
I thought those were like the strong points of the film. I actually thought like the stuff that maybe they're showing in the trailer, I didn't watch the trailer, like the whole, even some of the gang stuff and like Arm's other kind of arcs, like a bit underwhelming. I mean, they had the typical scene where he was jealous that she was hanging out with some other dude. I was like, bro, like, you understand?
Yeah, at the club.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was like. That's when I started realizing that this film might not turn out the way I thought. Like, this might be kind of mediocre. But I thought those scenes with like his son or with what's her name? I'll look up her name.
Ursula.
Ursula were the strong points. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I thought
I totally agree. But I mean, obviously, like there was. It was meant to be like that to kind of show his conflicted side or conflicted nature and how he really wanted to be there with his family. But yeah, it was interesting seeing, because obviously, so just for context, I do have a family member who kid is autistic, and so they actually engage in horse therapy, which is also why I was like, oh, some of these scenes were like kind of cool to see, and actually that is a strategy that is used, because you can clearly tell that Arm's son was pretty autistic. in the film, and it was just interesting to see because like Arm had some autistic tendencies too. Like
He
you could
did.
definitely see like where it came from. And I think that was also contributed to some of the tragedy. Is like he didn't really want to do or like engage in the lifestyle that he was in. But I don't know if he felt like he could do anything else to a degree too.
He felt
Like,
trapped.
yeah, he felt trapped. He also felt like he owed Barry or Dipna to a degree. Like, because I think Dipna has been there with him for like quite a long time, and it was like really hard to break it. I think that's part of it. It's just really hard to break out of that cycle, right? And actually have a happy outcome. I mean, that's something that The Wire really try to hammer home too.
Well, even other films we've discussed try to hammer home as well, right?
Yeah.
Like that, it's hard to, like I said, break out or
Yeah, I
change,
mean, this
change
started
your
with
system.
one of our, like, I think our third film, Upstream Color. It's hard to break cycles.
Yep. No, yeah. And I think like, yeah, I think I was gonna ask you is that like, what did you think of the like the community itself, like the setting, like a very rural gangster Ireland, like
Mm-hmm.
was there anything that was intriguing about that? Anything that was like, oh, that's we don't
I will
obviously
say,
see films that set there. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I will say the one of the strong points of the film that or at least that I liked, is I liked a lot of the shots that were taken in the film, or like kind of the directing style, even like especially later on in the film when he's getting chased by the crazy dude. Like some of the shots of the high speed chase with like rural Ireland in the background, or like the nature, they were like really cool and really dark and ominous kind of feeling. So I thought it had some redeeming like moments in sort of the style in which the film was shot. Yeah, I mean, it was. I think it was just trying to show a very kind of like small town, kind of almost depressed feel, because you could tell like these are like, and if you know anything about Ireland, like this definitely felt like you were more in like Northern Ireland, because it was more. It felt like there weren't just like a lot of opportunities for a lot of more working class people, which I think is partly why they wanted to focus on this side. And to Americans' eyes, they don't really know a lot of these aspects of Ireland, or kind of some of the history and some of the economically depressed aspects of this. I think that's kind of like the underbelly that they were trying to show with this film.
What's interesting is that like Ireland is like similar to like maybe they're basically next to each other, but they don't get a lot of sun. So actually, in terms of
No.
like the filmography, that is kind of accurate. Where like even in the summer, you might get a lot of cloudy days, and like
It's very like Seattle.
and it looks like that a little bit, yeah.
So I thought like they did a good job on some of the like larger, wider picture shots in the film. And yeah, that's what I've never been to Ireland, but that's what I imagine it to be. That's what I've heard. But I mean, you've even been to Northern Ireland. I'm sure
I've been to Belfast and Dublin, and
yeah. What were your thoughts on like those like contrast between those two?
I mean, Dublin, is an international city now because of the tax heavens that the big tech uses inappropriately. Sorry, I have to do a little shot there, but you could tell that what's interesting about Dublin is that like it's really a pub culture. You know how like we always joke how you can find Irish pub everywhere in the United States. Like that's pretty much like every 3 blocks in Dublin.
Sure. I'm not
and then like I actually did it before I got to Belfast. I actually did a trip to like the farthest part you can take the train to, local train. I mean, like the subway, not the large train, because I didn't have a car. What I've heard is that if you go to Ireland, you should rent a car and like drive around the island, the countryside. But I didn't have a car, so I took the longest train. And actually, a lot of like the gloomy, cloudy shots, it was like that because it was basically the train stops in a little town where like you can take a hike up basically like a hill, and like you actually come up right to the ocean. So like those typical Irish shots where the drone shots where like the ocean is hitting the rocks. Like I got to see that, and that was like the closest thing I got to the countryside. But it is very like it was very cloudy. It was summer. I was there. I don't know if it was summer actually. It was actually probably the late winter. But it was like pretty cold, and like it was like really windy and like cloudy, and like it was like a bit like the film. Belfast, on the other hand, was that you can tell you're back in the UK. I think one of the things I always share with you is that like one of the things that was striking was like the divide between like the Catholics and Protestants. That was the first thing you kind of notice. I think after that, what you kind of notice is like there's a lot of kids just smoking on the streets. When I say kids, I mean from 13 to like 19, and I think there's just a lot of youth unemployment there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you read about the history of Belfast, like they were known for like ship making and like metal industry, and like once that kind of like dissipated, you know, they become basically at best a tourism.
Yeah, it became more Rust Belt like with here in the US.
Exactly. And the economic development hasn't been there, and you know, there is a frustration with the lack of, I think, care from the, you know, the basically the parliament in the UK investing in Northern Ireland, but also there's parties in Northern Ireland that they will just vote for the, let's just say, the anti-separatist parties just because of that one single issue, right? And so like what you see on the ground is more complicated. The hardliners will always vote a certain way because their issue is more about nationalism or not nationalism. And when I say not, I mean like either joining the full island or staying as part of the UK. But for the people in the middle who might lean a certain way, the other issues is how you win the middle. You know, we always talk about that in politics, and what I notice is that like those who are Catholic, you know, they see like a better economic future if they were to become one island.
Mm-hmm.
And others, you know, they worry of their stature in their society if they were to become independent. They might not be a hardliner, but they're worried that if they did unify, you know, are they just pushed out, like discriminate? Like there are worries, there are fears and worries too on the other side of like,
being a minority.
They would be a minority, right? The thing is that what's interesting because of the demographic changes that are happening in that Northern Ireland, I'll just focus on that little region, is that I think over the next 15 years, whether they like it or not, even if they never get independent, they're going to be a minority, the Protestants, because of the shifting demographics. So they'll have to face that. We'll have to face that reality within our lifetime, which is why I've actually I've made the opinion that like whether they like it or not, I think eventually it's just going to happen. There's just going to be a unification of the island. I think also it also makes sense geographically, not to quote a thinker I used to like and now I don't.
Who is this?
I'm not gonna say his name.
What's his first name?
Peter. But but having crossed the border myself, it's a very frictionless process. Like I can see why the Brexit thing was such a huge deal, because when you cross the border, you don't even realize you're crossing a border. It's just straight.
It's like crossing a state line here.
Exactly. It's a very similar concept. And so like, you know, when Brexit was its height and they were really worried about having to, you know, have checkpoints across everything, one of the, obviously not just what, there was two things. One is that it brought back old tensions of the 70s and, you know, the IRA.
The troubles. Yeah.
But one guy who was like, you know, probably was an engineer or something, because, you know, this is too factual. He was out in the field. He's like, this is my farm. How are you going to monitor this? It's like monitoring the desert. Like, how are you going to monitor this whole forest? Like, this doesn't make sense. He said, like, you can't actually monitor. This is how they were smuggling weapons in the 70s. Like, you can't actually monitor this. Like, it's impossible. Even with, and they kept saying, like, with high-tech drone, you know, yes, the government said it. High-tech drones will monitor. It's like BS, you know, like, and so that was, and I mean, obviously they cut a deal where they allowed the basically fake border. But that was a real concern, because like, if you have to actually make a real border, like a wall, as the president of the United States would say, like, it was going to be virtually impossible. And so my opinion, we'll see if it ends up being true, February 8th, is that I think over the next decade or two, we will see just a natural, logical progression towards the unification, actually. And I think that moment, maybe the moment where the Brits truly finally realize that their empire is long gone. Because you got to remember that the British Empire starts with just half of the UK, right? It just starts with England. They take Scotland first. They take Ireland.
Wales.
They take Wales, and they take the world. I think Wales, unfortunately, is stuck forever.
Wales is not going anywhere.
Yeah, but like,
they're on the main island there. So
yeah, and they take the world, but like now, as you've seen, like since like the World War II, right? It's just been a shrinking influence. Even though the Brits they don't believe that. But yeah,
The Brits like to think that they're still the top dog, and
no, it's a continental issue over there. But I think it would be and honestly, like having been to also the UK, well, to the England, my sense, this is me as an outsider.
And you've been to Scotland too.
Yes, but my sense is they don't really care that much about Northern Ireland.
No,
but for them, because the English are very status driven. That's something that like always like it's a takeaway I always had when I visited England twice. Is that like for them psychologically losing Northern Ireland would be a huge blow because like they would have to start really considering the fact that like they're becoming
not
more
as powerful that they were.
They're becoming more and more irrelevant. Which anybody with a logical brain could have told you, but whatever. And I like British football. I actually do like some British culture, but like you have to face some reality. It's like, come on. But yeah, the long-winded answer to be like, yes, Ireland is like that, and you're right. The economic, the EU, one thing has done well is that it is invested in these places that because the thing is that if you look at like 45 years ago, Dublin and Belfast were actually kind of similar. And then what happens is that the EU really invests in these areas, and like over time, they've improved people's lives. And I guess for the Irish, Northern Irish is tough, right? Because they look across their border, quote unquote, and they just see like they have a different lifestyle, and they have real economic development, and they have real, maybe not the biggest say in the EU Council, but like they have a seat there, and like the Parliament in England will always, in my opinion, always focus on English issues first. The rest are always going to be secondary. I mean, that's just the way things are sometimes for people. So, but yeah. Hopefully you get to visit Ireland one day. It's a great country.
I hope to.
I always love actually they made a TV. Well, I haven't watched the TV show.
Like, I'd love to go to Northern Ireland at some point. It's just very sad from the little that I've known and read. Just especially with sort of their history, just the rate of benzodiazepine usage up there is like scary high. I think it might be the highest in Europe, which is pretty sad. And I remember you were like, I was talking to you about that, and you're like, yeah, just going around Belfast, you could see it. Like it's clear there's a lot more drug usage than other places.
Yeah, I mean, it was I still remember when that adult told like this old man, "What are you giving these kids?" I was like, I can't believe I'm seeing this in real life, dude. They had an argument in the school. I mean,
to a degree, now that we're talking about Ireland, it kind of makes sense with the character of Arm, because I think like Ireland's history is very rooted in its violent past, and they're trying to, I think, move past that. Kind of in the way that his character, more than we're talking about, I think Arm's character is just a representation of Ireland. Because I think he's trying to escape his troubled past and his violent past, but I don't know if he could ever fully move past that, and I think it just catches up with him. I think that might be where the director was trying to go with that character, which kind of makes sense to a degree. But I think this film might hit more, because we're outsiders, if we were actually like Irish.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But I don't know that much about sort of Irish sentiment to that degree.
But I would say that Ireland, since the Good Friday Agreement, has moved on. And Northern Ireland, the Catholics are seeing a future where I think the issue is actually going to be the Protestants.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of turmoil out there.
There is, but I think like the Catholics are on the up there. No bias, but
I don't know if there's still a lot of tension there. Like you could say.
Oh no, yeah. If you ever go, don't go around the Protestant neighborhood saying you're Catholic.
They still. I mean.
Yeah, they closed the gate. Yeah.
You say that, Chris, and 2 years ago, I remember seeing video footage of Belfast, and they had like huge fires breaking out. That was like 2 years ago.
The Catholics are oppressed there. They did the dictatorial UK government. Oh, sorry, I'm now doing another speech. Are you kidding me? Come on, man. You trigger me too much.
Yeah, no, but you get my point, though. And I think like you might have an issue with the character as a whole, but I think that was the whole point of the tragedy of Arm.
Well, then Arm, if he represents, I guess if he represents Northern Ireland, I can give you, but he represents Catholic Ireland. There's a character misread because he should have been killing those.
I mean, dude, doesn't this take place in Derry or somewhere in Northern Ireland? I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to represent Northern Ireland.
Let me see if I can find that out. Let me see if I can have AI tell me. Where does it take place? The setting of the film.
Because they mentioned a couple towns.
Now they keep it vague. It says set in a rural Irish town.
I think it's more towards Northern Ireland. At least that's what I was going with.
They probably keep it vague on purpose, actually.
Yeah.
So you're not like trying to read too much into that. It was filmed in Ireland, so
Well, okay.
hey, Northern Irish say it's not. We're not Ireland. We're Northern Ireland. Remember that too. When you're in the Protestant neighborhood, remember.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
Well,
Derry.
no, they
I
did
didn't.
film in Ireland and the UK.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I didn't go to Derry. I heard that that's even more intense.
Tense.
Yeah, because it's like, do you say Londonderry or say Derry? It says a lot to the people who are living in those neighborhoods. So, yeah, I mean, actually, this book became a TV show, which I'm not going to watch because I've heard that the TV show is not embellishes. No, the Hulu made a new show that's been really popular. I haven't watched it, but it's based on a book I read. It's called what's the show called? I don't have Hulu, but I just know it's called Say Nothing. I read the book actually. The book, obviously, you write about the topic of the Troubles is going to be controversial, especially if it's a foreign author. I liked the book. I thought the book took a hard nose at the IRA, but I didn't leave away reading the book thinking the IRA was like the devil. And I didn't walk away from the book thinking like the Northern Irish are like the best people either, or the DUP or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know why.
But but I know people feel strongly about
the IRA.
It was a foreign author, and it's obviously a controversial topic. But no, Hulu made a show. It's been really popular. People like this show.
What's it called?
It's called Say Nothing. I have not watched the show. They say there's historical inaccuracies and embellishments, but that's any TV show. But people who are not like, let's say they're not as plugged in, they have loved it. Like, it's got high ratings and stuff. And I've seen some of the clips. I'm like, oh, like, it's good acting and stuff. But I read the book, and it's like, I'm not gonna watch. Like, I have other things to watch it when I have my limited time. But yeah, it's on Hulu. People have been raving about it. I read the book. The book was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It spoke of like, look, as much as you can glorify the IRA, they did function like a militaristic gang at times. They killed innocent people just because they needed to make sure that people. It was basically like a dictatorship. I think Gary Adams is, in one certain perspective, a very historical, important character in Irish politics. But yes, I know he denies being in the IRA, but he was in the IRA. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I know why he denied it, because you got to make your political career clean. But he was in the. He might not have killed anybody, but he was definitely in the movement. And there was a documentary I didn't finish watching that I actually would recommend to people. It was. I actually never finished it, but it's really good. I saw the first 2 or 3 episodes. Highly actually, it's probably better than watching that show. It's called Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland, and it was made by the BBC. And what I liked about this documentary, at least the first 3 episodes I saw, is that it interviewed both people. And both people got to share their real story. Yeah. Like, one lady, she said she's in the IRA because and there's a film about this I've considered doing for the pod. It's about Bloody Sunday, but she lost her brother when the British police shot him in the back in this chaotic riot, which it took the British government maybe 40 years to acknowledge that the police shot first. Because what they said initially was the IRA were shooting us first, and so we returned fire. The thing is that all evidence pointed to the fact that
police shot first.
Yeah, because everybody was running away. So what people were saying is that, okay, everybody's running away. You're just shooting blindly into the crowd. And that's what they were doing. And what's interesting is that they interviewed even British military officers that were stationed in Northern Ireland. And they were adamant. They were saying yeah, I hated the Irish people, but we were there to protect the peace. And so you can see how things were just, simmering, and how both sides just hated each other. But yeah, it was great to hear the stories of individuals who said look, I lost my brother in this chaotic event. He's dead. There was no justice. The British government never took blame. And then when they finally took blame, the next step for this family is why weren't these police officers ever persecuted? But we know that's never going to happen. But like, you also got to hear the other side of like Protestants who felt really unnerved with Catholics who were basically like pushing them out of their neighborhoods. And again, this is like maybe because a lot of Irish Americans exist here. There's actually a lot of, and also Brits love doing movies about this. There's actually a lot of films about different sides of this and topics.
I mean, this is very complicated because even how Northern Ireland came to be, there's a period way back when where they picked out a lot of Irish and basically put a bunch of Protestants there.
They did
in that territory. So it's
William the Orange, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, there's some really good documentaries. I haven't seen all the episodes of Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland. I do want to finish it, but it's also a topic that I've read a lot about. That's why I visited the country and like. Well,
it's a fascinating history there.
I remember I told you the story. I was in Luke in Argentina, right? Yeah, we're doing the food tour, and this American and his Irish wife are there, and I'm talking about how like I know all about like the Troubles, the DUP, and the guy was like, "How do you know this? Are you a journalist?" I remember that he asked me if I was a journalist. I was like, "No, dude, this is
no," because it is a very tumultuous, fascinating history.
Yeah, I to me. I enjoy this modern history a lot, and also like it was adjacent to some history that I was propagandized as myself. So,
yeah, that's not so bad. My favorite though story of when you went to South America was when you were in Chile, and they were talking about the history with Pinochet, and there was a Canadian couple that you said was on one of the tour. You're like, wait, what's going on? What happened? And you're like, how do you not know about this?
I was dying. I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a dictatorship. I'm like, oh my
they disappeared like 500,000 people in Chile.
I was like, how the heck do you not know? Also, there's actually another movie on my radar. I haven't seen it, so I like to, as you know, for this pod, I like to watch it before I recommend it to the pod. But there's a film that's getting a lot of rave reviews. It came out, I think, last year. And it's about the dictatorship in Brazil, and how it tore families apart.
Which one? Oh, the military junta?
Yeah, I think it's called "I'm Still Here." Yeah, it came out recently. It's got rave reviews, great acting, and it's about it's about the Brazilian junta. Yeah.
What's it called?
I'm Still Here. It's a political biographical drama.
I'll check it out later.
Yeah.
Anyway, snap! This is still in theaters.
Yeah, still in theaters. It's gone huge raves and reviews. It came on my radar because
what's the other one that's big right now? Oh, The Brutalist. That's getting a lot of pretty big reviews.
Yeah, but
it's 3.5 hours, dude.
I'm always skeptical of those. Which one's 3.5? The Brutalist?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
which you do love your long films.
I do, and I do have one coming up at some point, but and you'll love it.
Is it a director's cut, Chris?
Of course, yeah. I only watch those versions. You're lucky I haven't picked Lord of the Rings director's cuts yet.
We're not doing that,
dude. My favorite.
It's like 6 hours.
I used to when I was young, when I was in middle school, this was before I went to MIDI, but I used to watch. I used to go up to Concord and go to my dad's place, and I used to watch like the director's set all day, dude. I used to love it, dude. I used to watch like Lord of the Rings, like 1, 2, and 3 director's edition, and like I wouldn't finish until like that night. I loved it, dude. Like, I actually consider Tolkien like one of the great underrated authors of our time. I think he was trying to tell us. He's also part of the generation like with what's his name, Fitzgerald, of the probably the best writers that we've had in the recent like in the West since like not a long time, but like the 20th century, like because they all like survived World War One, and then because there was such a traumatizing experience, they all became many of them great authors. So like I think Hemingway's from that generation, Fitzgerald, and obviously people forget Tolkien is too. He fought in that war, and like you can tell how when he does interviews or in his books, that some of his themes is like. He acknowledges like one of the major things of the Lord of the Rings is death and how you approach it, and is death the end or is it the beginning and stuff. And there's also a reason why there's a lot of religious undertones in the Lord of the Rings, which you can there's courses about it. Actually, I didn't realize that there was university courses about. This was a decade ago.
About death.
No, about the Christianity and Lord of the Rings. The Rings, but yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to this film because
Yeah.
we went on a lot of side tangents. Anyway, like this film isn't overly complicated. Basically, what it was is we'll just give the brief synopsis, right? It's about a boxer who kind of has a little checkered past. He's basically muscle for organized crime. One of the family members of this crime, a crime family in Ireland, that basically sexually assaults someone, and how basically Dymphna and Arm handle it is Arm just beats the Jesus out of this dude. But some of the other family members think that that's not enough, that he should have been offed. And so they gave him basically another chance to do so. And then he it is implied by the scene that Arm kills him, but in reality, he doesn't. He just lets him go. And they're called basically to one of the boss's homes, who's a little crazy. And basically, he makes it seem like everything is right. He's asking questions that are a little weird, right? And then it's implied that he knew that, or it's not implied. You realize at the end that he actually knew that he let him go because the guy, that was a crazy shot too, as they kind of zoom out and you see his body at the top of the barn, like just killed because the guy beat him. And then that's when they realized they were in trouble. And then that's when all hell breaks loose and you end up with the final scene. But that's kind of the gist of it. Obviously, there's a lot of more powerful scenes with Arm and his baby's mother and his son that kind of like pull him in different directions. But that's kind of the gist of it. Anyway, I will say even though the ending wasn't as satisfying as you pointed out, I will say some of the shots that they chose or how they showed it were like definitely added to aspects of the film. Specifically, like when they had the zoom out shot, because I was like, "Whoa!" I wasn't expecting that to see the dead guy at the very top of the.
Yeah, because they noticed because it was dripping. They were like, "What the hell is dripping on us?"
There's blood.
Yeah,
which was pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I thought the acting was very good in this film overall, even though you might not have liked the tone or the cadence or the ending. I think you got to admit that everyone did do a pretty good job nailing their roles.
Yeah, I know issues with the acting. I think I more issues with like the crafting of the story and like.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, anyway, do you want to get into the final ratings, or is there anything else you really want to talk about?
Nah, final rating for me is 6.5 out of 10.
Fair enough. You want to elaborate as to why, or did you think you hammered it home?
I'm not watching this movie again. That's the hammer home.
I think I was a little more lenient in that I think it was more supposed to represent sort of Ireland or their struggles and their past. But overall, I do agree there were aspects that kind of didn't really matter as much. Like you're talking about the club scene or some other aspects. And I don't know how high the rewatchability is for me in this film, but I did think that Arm really, I've seen Arm's character, I forgot the actor's name, in another TV series called Shogun. I think he's just very good and really nailed his role as Arm in this movie. And I just like Dymphna. I think I'm a little biased because I've seen a lot of roles of Barry very recently, so that kind of checkers my ratings a little bit. It biases it. So I give this movie a 7.5.
Nice.
Anyway, I think that's it for this week's episode. If you enjoyed our commentary, please like and subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for upcoming episodes.